The boy swallows a meteor and makes a pact with the demon, and his heart can conjure up a castle that can be moved. Today I bring you the pinnacle work of the master Hayao Miyazaki, Howl's Moving Castle. Sophie is a quiet and well-behaved girl, but she has low self-esteem about her appearance. One day, she plans to visit her sister. But halfway through, she is stopped by two badass soldiers. At this time, the handsome magician Howl appeared, and Howl not only relieved Sophie, but also personally sent Sophie to her sister's house before he left. After visiting her sister, Sophie returned home. At this time, a strange fat woman came to her house. The fat woman claims to be the witch of the wilderness, and casts a magical curse on Sophie, a curse that can change a person's appearance, and if a person falls under the curse, her appearance will change according to her own psychology. Due to Sophie's lack of confidence in her appearance, she soon finds herself an old woman, and Sophie, who has suddenly become old, is afraid to go downstairs to meet people. So, she decided to run away from home and go to a place where no one knew her. Sophie arrives in a valley where she rescues the scarecrow. Kaito is also a cursed man, and he thanks Sophie for saving her life and gives her a walking stick. Sophie, who is old and frail, hopes that Kaito can help her find a place to stay. After a while, the head of the dish actually brought Howl's mobile castle over. Sophie enters the castle and discovers that there is a fire demon living in the stove, and the fire demon has signed a contract with Howl to be the power source for moving the castle. Sophie was so tired after a long day of trekking that she soon fell asleep. The next day, Sophie wakes up from her sleep to find soldiers visiting the door, and the native soldiers have been sent by the king to recruit the magician Howl into the army, but they are all sent by Howl's younger apprentice, Mark. Sophie discovers that the castle is a very magical building. There are 4 different doors, each door leads to a different location, and Mark tells Sophie not to mess around and go over for breakfast. Sophie was about to make a cooked meal when Howl came back and asked Sophie for her identity, and Sophie said that she was the new cleaner, and Howl didn't ask anymore. He took Sophie's spatula and cooked a delicious breakfast for the 3 of them, and when she was full, Sophie began to tidy up the messy castle. However, due to the force, the fire demon was almost destroyed by her, but Howl appeared in time to bring the fire demon back to life, and he asked Sophie to take care of the fire demon for a long time, and then went out through the black exit. The fire demon also reminds Sophie that his life is one with Howl, and that if it is extinguished, Howl will not survive. In the evening, Howl returned to the castle from the battlefield, and he hurried to take a hot shower from exhaustion, but halfway through the shower he broke down and rushed out of the bathroom. It turned out that Sophie moved the magic bottle in the bathroom while cleaning, which caused Howl's hair color to change from blonde to red, and Howl, who loves beauty, couldn't accept this hair color, and the shadow in his heart instantly swelled, and the whole person turned into a sticky monster. Sophie was very aggrieved. Obviously she was kind enough to clean the room, but in the end, she was blamed by Howl, and God also left her tears of grievance. Sophie was very touched by the fact that Sophie jumped over and held up an umbrella for Sophie, and Mark also ran over and begged Sophie to come back and help Howl. Sophie put away her tears and sent Howl back to the bathroom with Mark, but when she went up the stairs, she accidentally knocked off the fig leaf on Howl's body, which caused Sophie's girl's heart to crash. After a few days, Howl finally recovered, but he began to worry about the king's summons. Howl looked at Sophie in front of the bed, and suddenly decided to let Sophie pretend to be his mother into the palace to help him shirk the king's position. Sophie followed Howl's instructions to the palace, but unexpectedly, the witch of the wilderness was also invited, and the palace was cast a forbidden spell. It took a great deal of effort for the 2 of them to climb up the stairs, and when they entered the palace, Sophie was invited by the guards. The witch of the wilderness was beaten back to her original form by the palace's magic array, and the guards took Sophie to the court magician Salomon. Salomon is Howl's teacher, and she admires Howl's talent, but says that Howl has given his soul to demons, and in the long run, Howl may become the next witch of the wilderness. After saying that, she brought the witch who had changed back into her original form, and then asked Sophie to bring a message to Howl that if Howl refused to serve the country, she would abolish Howl's magic. Sophie was furious when she heard Salamon's words. She bravely stood up to speak for Howl, and her appearance gradually changed back to her youthful appearance. Everyone should remember that Sophie's curse is such a magic that will make her appearance change with her psychology. While Sophie and Salomon are arguing, Howl rushes over, and Salomon attacks Howl with a spell, but Howl escapes in the end. Howl casts an invisibility spell on Sophie, and he distracts the king's guard as they arrive. After some tossing, Sophie finally returned to the castle with the witch. The next day, Howl also returned to the castle. In order to evade Salomon pursuit, he decides to lead the group to move. Howl set up a magic circle on the ground, moved the castle to the town where Sophie used to live, and then took Sophie to Star Lake. Looking at the familiar Star Lake in front of her, Sophie turned back into an energetic girl. Howl pointed to his childhood cottage and said it was free for Sophie. But at this time, Sophie's inferiority complex came out again, and she was afraid that the handsome Howl would not look down on her. Fearing that one day Howl would leave her, she turned back into Granny Sophie. While the two were talking, a battleship flew over, and Howl, who was extremely war-averse, couldn't tolerate the presence of a battleship. So he played a little trick and caused a little trouble for the battleship. However, his magic quickly attracted the attention of the enemy, and the battleship sent soldiers to attack Howl. Howl sent Sophie back to the castle and led the soldiers himself, but the fighting grew stronger and harder, and soon spread to the town. Just as Sophie is about to be hit by a cannonball, Howl arrives just in time to catch the cannonball, and Sophie hopes to escape with Howl. But Howl says that he has been running away for too long, and this time he is going to fight for Sophie, and after saying that, he flies off to the battlefield. Sophie is worried about Howl's safety and decides to move the castle elsewhere, but the castle is now trapped in the magic circle by Howl and cannot be moved. Sophie takes the fire demon out of the castle, and the castle that has lost its power source soon collapses, and Sophie hopes that the fire demon can help them build a small castle again. The fire demon tells Sophie that she must trade something from herself. Sophie sacrifices her hair to rejuvenate the fire fiend. The fire demon rebuilt a light mobile castle and headed for the battlefield. But just as Sophie signs a contract with the fire demon, the witch discovers the fire demon's secret. It turns out that the fire demon turned out to be Howl's heart, and the greedy witch wanted to get Howl's heart, but was scorched by the scorching flames. In order to save the witch, the kind-hearted Sophie took water to extinguish the flames. This left the heart dying and could no longer power the castle, and soon the castle collapsed. Sophie falls into a valley, and just as Sophie blames herself, the ring that Howl has given her glows strangely. Sophie follows the beam of light to Howl's childhood hut, and then from the hut to Howl's childhood. On the shores of the Lake of Stars, Howl took the fire demon that fell from the sky, and signed a contract with the fire demon to sacrifice his heart to the fire demon, from whom he also gained great power. Just as Sophie could see her mind, the space beneath her feet began to crumble, and Sophie called out to Howl to wait for her in the future. It was only here that we realized that Howl had known Sophie from the beginning. It's just that Sophie hasn't thought of him yet, so Howl has to silently guard Sophie's side. Sophie, who knows the truth, is touched by this love that transcends time. Her tears flowed uncontrollably, and Sophie returned to the valley from her childhood cottage, only to find Howl mortally wounded and guarding the outside of the cottage. Sophie doesn't care about Howl's monster appearance and gives Howl an affectionate kiss, and Howl takes Sophie back to the Witch of the Wilderness. Sophie asks the witch to return Howl's heart to her, and Sophie reinfuses Howl's heart into Howl's body, and also breaks the contract between Howl and the fire demon. Now, Howl finally came back to life. However, the plank, which had lost its magical support, fell rapidly towards the cliff. At the critical moment, Kaito stepped forward to block the falling plank. Sophie kissed the head of the cabbage softly and thanked him for saving his life. Unexpectedly, this actually lifted the curse of the vegetable head and made him turn back into the prince of the neighborhood. With the prince's curse lifted, he also returned to his own country, and war between the two countries was avoided. The fire demon was reluctant to let Sophie and everyone go, so he built a flying castle and drove Howl and Sophie into the distance.